5 minutes. That's how long it took for my marriage to end, and for everything my husband thought he owned to start slipping through his fingers. I was still sitting in that quiet law office in Chicago, the ink barely dry on the divorce papers, when I saw the message, "Boarding now. Can't wait to celebrate tonight." It wasn't meant for me. It was from her. Madison, 31. A project manager. The woman my husband had been seeing while still coming home to me every night like nothing had changed. I remember staring at the screen, waiting for something inside me to break, waiting for the tears, the anger, the panic, but none of it came. Instead, everything went still, because in that moment, I understood something far worse than betrayal. I had already been replaced. And while Adam was walking out of that office, heading straight to the airport with his mistress, believing he had just won his freedom, I was about to take back something he never even realized I controlled. 5 minutes. That was all it took for everything to change. The lawyer slid the final document toward me, her voice calm and rehearsed. "Allison, once you sign here, the divorce will be legally finalized." I nodded, my fingers resting lightly on the pen. The room felt sterile, too clean, too quiet, like nothing emotional was allowed to exist inside those walls. Just signatures, decisions, and endings that could be filed away in neat folders. Across from me, Adam leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. His suit was perfectly tailored, his posture relaxed, his expression unreadable. No regret, no hesitation, just indifference. That was what hurt the most. 6 years of marriage reduced to a transaction he couldn't wait to finish. I signed my name, Allison Carter. The moment the pen left the paper, something inside me shifted, not shattered, not broken, just released. The lawyer gathered the documents and started explaining next steps. But her words faded into the background, because Adam's phone buzzed. He didn't even try to hide it. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, and smiled. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. I don't know what made me look. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way his entire demeanor changed in a single second. But I saw it. "Madison, can't wait. I booked the suite. You deserve this." My chest tightened, but not from heartbreak. From clarity. So this was it. While I was signing away the last piece of our life together, he was already planning a celebration with someone else. No transition. No guilt. No pause. Just replacement. I leaned back slowly, watching him type his reply without a trace of discomfort, as if I were already gone, as if I didn't exist anymore. And that's when something inside me clicked into place. Not anger, not sadness, something colder, more precise. Because suddenly, every moment from the past year made sense. The late nights, the business trips that never quite added up, the way he had stopped asking about my day, the way I had started to feel like a guest in my own marriage. And the worst part, I had spent months blaming myself, wondering what I had done wrong, what I could fix, what I could become to make him stay. But sitting there, watching my husband smile at another woman right in front of me, I finally understood the truth. There was nothing wrong with me. I had just been standing in the way of something he had already chosen. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 5 minutes past noon. 5 minutes since I signed the papers. 5 minutes since I officially became his past. Adam stood up, adjusting his jacket like he had somewhere far more important to be. "I've got a flight," he said casually, not even looking at me. "My lawyer will handle the rest." Of course he did. Everything had been planned. Everything except me. I watched him walk toward the door without hesitation, without turning back, without even pretending to care. No goodbye. No apology. Nothing. The door closed behind him with a soft click. And just like that, he was gone. For a moment, I sat there in silence. The kind of silence that usually comes right before someone falls apart. But I didn't. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. There was something I hadn't touched in years. Something I had almost forgotten existed. Not a contact. Not a message. A system. Something my father had put in place long before Adam ever became part of my life. Back when he used to tell me, in that calm, steady voice, never build your future on someone else's decisions. Allison, one day, they'll make a choice that doesn't include you. I used to think he was being overly cautious. Now, I realized he had simply been right. I unlocked my phone and opened the secured interface. My thumb hovered over the screen for just a second. Not because I was unsure, but because I understood exactly what would happen next. Outside, somewhere above the clouds, Adam was probably leaning back in his seat, thinking he had just escaped a life he no longer wanted, thinking he was free. But what he didn't know was that he had just walked away from the only thing holding everything together, and I was the one about to let it all go. 5 minutes. That was all it took. And this time, I was the one making the decision. I didn't leave the building right away. Most people would have rushed out of that office, called someone, cried in their car, or sat in silence trying to process the end of something that once meant everything. But I stayed. I sat there for a few seconds longer than necessary, staring at the closed door Adam had just walked through, replaying the way he didn't even look back. That detail mattered more than anything else, because it told me this wasn't sudden. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision he had made long before today, and I had just been the last one to realize it. When I finally stood up, the room felt different. Not emptier, not heavier, just clearer, like something invisible had been removed. I stepped into the hallway, the soft echo of my heels against the polished floor sounding louder than usual, and pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open almost immediately. Inside, the mirrored walls reflected a version of me I almost didn't recognize. Same coat, same hair, same posture. But my eyes were different. There was no panic, no confusion, just something sharp, focused. And once you see things clearly like that, there's no going back. My phone buzzed before the elevator even reached the ground floor. Danielle. Of course. I stared at her name for a second before answering. Yes. Her voice came through immediately, tight and controlled, like she had already decided how this conversation would go. I just spoke to Adam. What exactly did you do this time? I leaned my head lightly against the cool metal wall behind me. I signed the divorce papers. A pause, then a quiet scoff. Well, you didn't have to make it so difficult. He's been under a lot of pressure. You could have handled this with more grace. Grace. That word again? Danielle loved that word. To her, grace meant silence. It meant compliance. It meant knowing your place and not stepping outside of it. I handled it exactly how it needed to be handled, I said calmly. Another pause. This one heavier. You always had a problem with understanding what's important, she continued. Adam needed stability. Support. Not resistance. I almost laughed. But I didn't. Because this wasn't new. Danielle had never liked me. From the moment Adam introduced me, I was already wrong in her eyes. Not ambitious enough. Not impressive enough. Not someone who elevated her son's image. I was just a teacher. And in her world, that meant something. It meant I was temporary. Replaceable. You should be grateful he stayed with you this long, she added, her voice soft but cutting. Not every man would. There it was. The sentence she had used in different forms for years. And for a long time, I had believed it. I'll talk to you later, I said, cutting her off before she could continue. I didn't wait for her response. I just hung up. The silence that followed felt different. Not uncomfortable. Not heavy. Just mine. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out into the lobby, the glass doors ahead revealing a gray Chicago afternoon. My phone buzzed again before I could reach the exit. Chloe, I answered without slowing down. Allison, what's going on? She asked. Her voice quick, sharp, already edged with judgment. It's done, I said. That's all. A short pause. Then a small, Almost amused exhale. Well, I guess that's for the best. You two were never really a match anyway. Of course we weren't. Not to her. Chloe saw everything as a transaction. Career. Status. Value. And I had never fit into her version of success. Not with my quiet mornings and lesson plans. Not with a job that didn't come with prestige or power. I pushed open the glass doors and stepped outside. The cold air hitting my face like a reset. Take care of yourself, she added, though it sounded more like a formality than anything else. You too, I replied. Ending the call, I slipped my phone into my bag and started walking. My steps steady, my breathing even. And as I moved through the city, something surfaced in my mind, clear, sharp, impossible to ignore. A memory. Thanksgiving. Danielle's dining room. Warm and perfectly arranged. Every detail curated to reflect control. Chloe had leaned back in her chair, wine glass in hand, studying me with that familiar expression. So, Allison, she had said lightly, do you ever plan on doing something bigger? Or are you just comfortable where you are? There had been a soft ripple of laughter around the table. Even Adam smiled. He didn't defend me. He didn't say a word. I had smiled back then. Polite. Controlled. But something inside me had shifted that night. I just hadn't recognized it yet. Back in the present. I reached my car and sat inside without starting the engine. For a moment, everything was quiet again. No voices. No expectations. No one telling me who I was supposed to be. People always mistake silence for weakness. They think patience means you don't see what's happening. That choosing not to fight means you don't have the power to. But what they don't understand is, sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes, it's preparation. I rested my hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, letting that thought settle. Because the truth was, I had seen everything. Every comment. Every look. Every moment I was dismissed or underestimated. I had just chosen not to respond. Not yet. My phone was still in my bag. And for the first time that day, I reached for it again, not out of instinct, but with intention. There was something buried in there. Something I hadn't opened in years. Something my father had put in place long before Adam ever became part of my life. I pulled the phone out slowly, my thumb hovering over the screen. They thought I was weak. They thought I had walked away with nothing. They thought today was the end of my story. But sitting there, in the quiet of my own space, I realized something with absolute clarity. I had never been playing the same game they were. And now, I was finally ready to make my move. I had almost forgotten about it. Not because it wasn't important, but because I had never needed it. Until now. I sat in my car, the city noise fading into the background, my phone resting in my hand like something heavier than it should have been. The screen glowed softly, waiting for me. And suddenly, I could hear his voice again. My father's. Clear. Calm. Certain. Love doesn't protect you. Allison. Structure does? I used to roll my eyes when he said things like that. I thought he was too cautious. Too guarded. Too focused on systems and control when life was supposed to be about trust. But sitting there, 5 minutes after my marriage ended, I realized something I should have understood years ago. He wasn't teaching me how to distrust people. He was teaching me how to survive them. I closed my eyes for a moment, and the memory came back without effort. His office. Tall windows. Dark wood. Papers neatly stacked in precise lines. Everything in its place. I was younger then, sitting across from him, half listening as he explained something I didn't fully care about at the time. You need layers, he said, sliding a folder toward me. Not just accounts, not just signatures. Layers. I remember frowning. Layers of what? Protection, he replied simply. So that when someone makes a decision that doesn't include you, your life doesn't collapse with it. At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. Now, I understood he had been preparing me for this exact moment. Back in the present, I opened my eyes and looked down at my phone. The interface was still there, hidden behind a secured login I hadn't accessed in years. I hesitated, not out of fear, but out of awareness, because once I opened this, there was no going back to the version of me who didn't know. My thumb moved. Face recognition. Passcode. Secondary authentication. Each step felt deliberate, controlled, familiar. And then it opened. The screen didn't look dramatic. There were no flashing alerts or warnings. Just clean lines. Structured options. Quiet control. Exactly like him. I exhaled slowly, my fingers hovering just above the display. And then another memory surfaced. Not from childhood. From my marriage. Adam sitting across from me at the kitchen table, flipping through a stack of documents I had placed in front of him. "Do we really need to go through all of this?" he had asked, barely glancing at the pages. "It's just paperwork. It's important." I had said, "We should both understand how everything is set up." He laughed lightly, pushing the papers aside. "You worry too much. I've got it handled." I remember looking at him, wanting to believe that confidence meant stability, wanting to believe that letting go meant trusting. So I stopped insisting. I let him sign things without reading carefully. I let him assume control over things he didn't truly understand. And the entire time, he thought that meant ownership. But now, sitting there, staring at the system my father had built, I saw the truth clearly. Adam never controlled anything. He had access. That was all. And access can be taken away. I scrolled through the structure slowly, recognizing pieces of it like fragments of a puzzle I hadn't realized I was holding. Joint accounts linked, but not independent. Credit lines dependent on layered authorization. Asset structures designed to shift under specific conditions. Conditions that had just been met. A quiet realization settled in. This wasn't something I needed to create. It had already been created. Years ago. Before Adam. Before the marriage. Before any of this. My father had never trusted chance. And he had never trusted anyone else with my future. I leaned back slightly in the driver's seat, letting that sink in. All this time, I thought I had been vulnerable, that I had built my life around something fragile. But the truth was, I had been standing inside a system designed to protect me. I just hadn't seen it. Not until now. My phone vibrated softly in my hand. A message. From an unknown number. No name. No identifier. Just a single line. Awaiting confirmation. I stared at it for a second. My pulse steady. My breathing even. No panic. No hesitation. Just clarity. Because now I understood what this was. Not revenge. Not anger. Not even justice. This was alignment. This was everything shifting back into its intended place. I glanced at the time again. 5 minutes had already passed since I signed those papers. 5 minutes since Adam walked out of that office thinking he had everything figured out. 5 minutes since he stepped into a future built on assumptions. Assumptions he never questioned. Assumptions he never understood. I thought about calling him, for a brief second, telling him to stop, warning him, giving him a chance to realize what was about to happen. But the thought disappeared as quickly as it came, because he had already made his choice, long before today, and I had spent too much time trying to adjust myself to fit into decisions I never agreed to. Not anymore. I looked back at the screen, at the quiet message waiting for me, awaiting confirmation. My father's voice echoed one more time in my mind. One day, you won't have time to hesitate. He was right. That day had come. I lifted my thumb, holding it just above the screen. And for the first time since everything ended, I allowed myself a small, steady breath. Because this wasn't the moment I lost something. This was the moment I finally understood what I had always had. Then I tapped, and everything began to move. The moment I pressed confirm, nothing happened. At least, not in any way you could see. There were no alarms, no flashing warnings, no dramatic shift in the air around me. Just a quiet, almost indifferent notification. Process initiated. I stared at the screen for a second longer than necessary, waiting for something, anything to feel different. But it didn't. Because this wasn't the kind of change you could hear. This was the kind that spread quietly, beneath the surface, until there was nothing left holding everything together. I glanced at the time again. 5 minutes past 12. 5 minutes since I signed the papers. 5 minutes since I stopped being his wife. And now, 5 minutes since I made my decision. I locked my phone and placed it gently in my lap, leaning back in the driver's seat as if I had just finished something ordinary. Because in a way, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't chasing him. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I had simply removed myself, and everything that depended on me would have to adjust, or collapse, far above the city. Somewhere between Chicago and Miami, Adam was probably leaning back in his seat, completely unaware. I could picture it clearly. His jacket folded neatly beside him, his phone in his hand. That same relaxed expression he wore when he thought everything was under control. Madison sitting next to him, close enough to feel like a reward, a new beginning, a better version of his life. That's what he believed. I almost smiled at the thought. Because what he didn't understand, what he had never bothered to understand, was that his life wasn't built on what he owned. It was built on what he had access to. And access can be revoked. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. No calls, no messages, no immediate consequences. Just the steady awareness that something had already started. Not fast, not loud, but inevitable. When I opened my eyes again, I reached for my phone and unlocked it once more. The system interface was still there, unchanged on the surface. Clean, minimal, controlled. But now, there were updates, small confirmations, subtle shifts, account statuses adjusting, authorizations being rewritten, layers repositioning exactly as they had been designed to. I didn't rush through it. I read everything slowly, carefully, not because I didn't trust it, but because I wanted to understand it. For the first time, completely. This wasn't just something my father had built. This was something he had built for me. A structure that didn't depend on anyone else's decisions. A system that didn't break when someone walked away. A foundation that stayed intact, no matter who left. I exhaled slowly, setting the phone down again. And for the first time that day, I felt something close to calm. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just stability. The kind I hadn't felt in a long time. My phone buzzed lightly. A message. This time, not from the system. From Adam. I stared at his name on the screen for a second before opening it. Boarding. Talk later. That was it. No acknowledgement of what had just happened. No recognition of the finality of the moment. Just another step forward in a life he thought he had already secured. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. Because whatever conversation he thought we were going to have later was already over. I slipped the phone back into my bag and started the engine. The city moved around me as I pulled out into traffic, everything continuing as if nothing had changed. And that was the strange part. The world doesn't stop for moments like this. There's no pause, no announcement, just quiet transitions happening beneath the surface. I drove without a destination for a few minutes, letting the rhythm of the road steady my thoughts. Every part of me felt aligned, like something that had been out of place for a long time had finally shifted back into position. This wasn't revenge. It didn't feel like revenge. There was no rush of emotion, no desire to watch him suffer. Just a clear, controlled understanding of what I had done, and why I had stepped out of something that no longer protected me. And in doing that, I had taken everything that depended on me with me, somewhere, thousands of feet above the ground. Adam's plane was cutting through the sky, carrying him toward a version of his life he believed was already waiting. A celebration. A reward. An ending that felt like a victory. But what he didn't realize was that everything he was flying toward had already begun to unravel. Not instantly. Not all at once. But piece by piece, layer by layer, the way it had been designed to, I tightened my grip on the steering wheel slightly. My eyes focused on the road ahead. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't trying to understand him. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was simply moving forward. And behind me, something had already started to fall apart. I didn't need to see it happen. I didn't need to watch it unfold. Because I already knew. The process had begun. And this time, there was no way to stop it. By the time Adam arrived at the resort, the sun was already setting. Warm light spilled across the ocean, turning everything gold. Water, glass, skin. The kind of place designed to make people feel like they had made it. And for Adam, that was exactly what it was. A reward. A beginning. A clean break from everything he thought had been holding him back. Madison stepped out of the car first, her heels clicking softly against the polished stone as she looked around, taking everything in, not with wonder but with evaluation. She wasn't impressed. She was measuring. "Not bad," she said, her voice casual, but her eyes sharp. "You didn't mention this place." Adam smiled, sliding his sunglasses off as if he belonged there. "I like to keep a few surprises," he replied. Of course he did. Surprises were easy when you believed everything you touched was yours. A concierge greeted them at the entrance. Already informed. Already prepared. "Mr. Carter, welcome. Your suite is ready." That was the part Adam loved. Recognition. Status. The quiet assumption that he was someone important. Madison watched closely as they were escorted inside, her expression softening, not from affection, but from confirmation. This was the life she expected. The life she thought she had chosen. Inside the suite, everything was immaculate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Champagne already waiting on ice. Soft music playing in the background. Adam walked in like he owned the place. Madison followed. Slower. Her gaze lingering on details most people wouldn't notice. She walked to the window, placing her hand lightly on the glass. "So this is what freedom looks like," she said. Adam laughed, pouring 2 glasses of champagne. "It's just the beginning." He handed her a glass. They clinked. To something new. To something better. To something they both believed was real. Hours passed quickly after that. Dinner reservations were made. Private seating. A table positioned perfectly to overlook the water as the sky darkened into deep blue. The restaurant was quiet but expensive, the kind of place where no one asked about the price. Because people who came there didn't need to. Adam leaned back in his chair, relaxed, confident, completely at ease. For the first time in a long time. There was no tension in his voice, no obligation in his posture, no Allison, no responsibility. Just him. Exactly where he believed he was meant to be. Madison watched him carefully as the waiter poured wine. "You seem different," she said. He smirked. "Better." "Right." She tilted her head slightly. "Lighter." He took a sip of his drink, nodding. "Because I finally don't have to carry someone else anymore." The words hung in the air for a second longer than they should have. Madison didn't react immediately, but something shifted. Not visibly, not dramatically. Just enough. She smiled again. But it wasn't the same smile from earlier. It was more controlled, more aware. "So what happens now?" she asked casually. "With everything, back home." Adam waved his hand dismissively. "It's handled. How? I made sure everything was set before I left," he said, his tone confident, almost bored. "There's nothing to worry about." Madison studied him for a moment, then took a slow sip of her drink. "And your accounts?" she asked. "Your business?" "Stable," he said quickly. "Completely under control." That was the moment she decided something. He didn't notice it. He couldn't. Because he was still talking. Still explaining. Still performing the version of himself he believed in. But Madison had stopped listening to what he was saying. She was watching how he said it. And for the first time that night, she wasn't entirely convinced. The waiter returned. Presenting the menu, Adam didn't even look at the prices. "Get whatever you want," he told her. And she did. Champagne upgraded, additional courses. The kind of order that wasn't just indulgent, it was a test. And Adam passed it without hesitation. Of course he did. Because hesitation wasn't something he recognized. Not when it came to money. Not when it came to control. The night stretched on. Each course more elaborate than the last. Laughter came easily. Drinks kept coming. And from the outside, everything looked perfect. 2 people celebrating. 2 people starting something new. 2 people exactly where they wanted to be. But beneath the surface, something had already shifted. Adam didn't feel it yet. Not in his hands. Not in his voice. But somewhere else, something had already begun to move. Back in Chicago, I sat quietly at home, my phone resting beside me. I didn't need to check it constantly. I didn't need updates every second, because I already knew how this worked. It didn't break all at once. It unraveled, slowly, quietly, until there was nothing left to hold it together. My phone vibrated once. A notification. Brief. Subtle. A confirmation I didn't need to open. I glanced at it, then looked away. No reaction. No satisfaction. Just acknowledgement. Because this wasn't something I needed to watch. It was something that was already happening. Back at the restaurant, the plates had been cleared. The drinks nearly finished. Adam leaned forward slightly, signaling the end of the night. The bill. A simple gesture. Routine. Effortless. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Madison adjusted in her seat, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of her glass. Waiting. Observing. A few moments passed. Then a few more. Long enough to notice. Long enough to feel. The waiter returned. Polite? Composed. But something was different. Something small. Something almost invisible. And for the first time that night, the air at the table shifted. Adam didn't notice it yet. But Madison did. And somewhere, deep beneath everything Adam believed was still solid, the first crack had already formed. That was the moment everything started to change. "I'm sorry. Sir, there seems to be an issue with your card." The waiter's voice was calm. Polite. Practiced. The kind of tone designed to keep situations like this from becoming noticeable. Adam barely looked up from his seat. "That's fine," he said, reaching into his jacket. "Run it again." He slid the card back across the table with the same casual confidence he had carried all night. Because to him, this wasn't a problem. It was a delay. A minor inconvenience. The waiter nodded and stepped away. Madison didn't speak. She just watched. Not with concern. Not yet. Just attention. A few moments passed. Long enough for the rhythm of the night to break. Long enough for the silence to settle into something slightly uncomfortable. The waiter returned. This time, there was no smile. "I'm sorry." "Sir, it's still not going through?" Adam let out a small breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "That's strange," he said. "Must be a bank issue." "Try this one." He pulled out another card. Different color. Different account. Same confidence. The waiter took it without comment. Madison leaned back slightly in her chair, her posture shifting just enough to create distance. "Travel restrictions?" she asked lightly. "Probably." Adam replied without hesitation. "It happens." He didn't believe that, but he didn't question it either. Because questioning meant doubt, and doubt wasn't something he allowed himself. The waiter returned again. This time, there was a pause before he spoke. "I'm afraid this one has been declined as well." The word landed differently. Declined. Not delayed. Not processing. Declined. Adam's expression changed. Just for a second. A flicker. Then it disappeared. "That's not possible," he said, his tone sharper now. "Run it again." The waiter hesitated. "I've already attempted twice." "Sir." Adam leaned forward. placing both hands on the table. Then try another terminal. There it was. The first sign, not panic. Not yet. But irritation. The need to regain control. The waiter nodded again. But this time there was something else in his expression. Awareness. People nearby had started to notice. Not openly. Not obviously. But enough. Adam reached into his wallet again, pulling out a third card. Then a fourth. He placed them on the table, one after another, as if quantity alone could fix the situation. Run all of them, he said. Madison's eyes moved from the cards to his face. She didn't speak, but something had changed. The waiter gathered the cards and left. The silence that followed was no longer subtle. It stretched. Heavy. Visible. Adam picked up his glass, taking a slow sip, as if nothing had happened, as if everything was still exactly the way it should be. Madison set her glass down carefully. Adam, she said, her voice quiet but firm. What's going on? Nothing, he replied quickly. It's a system issue. She didn't look convinced. But she didn't push further. Not yet. The waiter returned. This time, he wasn't alone. A manager stood a few steps behind him. Professional. Composed. Observing. I'm sorry. Sir, the waiter said again, placing the cards back on the table. All payment methods have been declined. No softness this time. No ambiguity. Just fact. Adam stared at the cards. Then at the waiter. Then at the manager. This doesn't make any sense, he said. There's plenty of credit available. I understand, sir, the manager replied, stepping forward slightly. But at this time, we're unable to process any of these. The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. You can't pay. Madison shifted in her seat, her body angling slightly away from him now. Do you have another form of payment? The manager asked. Adam didn't answer immediately, because for the first time that night, he didn't have one. He picked up his phone, unlocking it quickly. Banking apps. Account screens. Refreshing. Again. And again. Nothing changed. The numbers weren't there. The access wasn't there. The control he thought he had wasn't there. That's not right, he muttered. That's not possible. Madison leaned forward slightly, her voice lower now. Adam, what's going on? He didn't look at her. I said it's fine. But it wasn't. Not anymore. The manager waited. Patient. Expecting resolution. Adam's fingers tightened around his phone. This is a mistake, he said. Louder now. Fix it. We can hold the bill for a short time. The manager replied, still calm. But we will need a valid form of payment. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. Every second longer than it should have been. Adam looked at the cards again. Then at the phone. Then at nothing. Because there was nothing left to reach for. Madison sat back fully now. Her distance no longer subtle. Her expression had changed. No concern. No confusion. Just calculation. The kind that comes when something no longer feels stable. This isn't what you told me, she said quietly. Adam didn't respond. Because he didn't have an answer. Because for the first time in years, he didn't understand what was happening. And somewhere, far away from that table, I sat in silence. No calls. No messages. No reaction. Because I already knew. This wasn't an error. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't something he could fix with a phone call or a demand. This was the beginning. And back at that table, surrounded by people who were starting to notice, watched by staff who no longer saw him the same way, Adam finally understood something he had never had to face before. For the first time in years, he had nothing. And there was no one left to fix it for him. He didn't sleep that night, even after the bill was handled, awkwardly, painfully. Through a forced transfer arranged after multiple calls, something had already shifted, and Adam could feel it. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. The sweet that had felt like a reward just hours ago now felt Unfamiliar. Too quiet. Too large. Too exposed. Madison moved differently now. She wasn't pacing. She wasn't asking questions. She was watching. From a distance. Adam stood near the window, his phone pressed tightly in his hand, refreshing the same screens over and over again. Accounts. Balances. Credit lines. Nothing changed. The same restricted access. The same missing confirmations. The same absence of control. This doesn't make any sense, he muttered. Madison didn't respond right away. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, legs crossed, her posture composed, almost detached. Finally, explain it to me. Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It wasn't supportive. It was measured, and that difference mattered. Adam turned toward her, irritation flashing across his face. I told you, it's a system issue. All of them, she asked. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then, yes. Madison held his gaze. And in that silence, something broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough for her to see it. You said everything was secured before you left, she continued. It is. Then why can't you access it? Adam exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Because something's blocking it. Temporarily. Madison didn't argue. She didn't challenge him directly. She just leaned back slightly, her eyes never leaving his. And that was worse. Because she wasn't reacting emotionally anymore. She was evaluating. Adam looked back down at his phone, opening his business account this time. The screen took longer to load. When it did, something felt off. He frowned. The interface looked the same, but the numbers weren't where they should be. He refreshed. Again. Still nothing. His jaw tightened. He switched to another section. Transaction history. Recent activity. There were entries he didn't recognize. Not withdrawals. Not exactly. More like adjustments. Reallocations. His pulse picked up. What is it? Madison asked. Nothing, he said quickly. But his voice had changed, and she heard it. His phone buzzed. An incoming call. Work. He hesitated before answering. Yeah. The voice on the other end was tense. Adam, we have a problem. His grip on the phone tightened. What kind of problem? Payroll didn't go through this morning. He blinked. What? It's flagged. The account isn't processing. That's not possible, he said immediately. Try again. We did. Multiple times. Adam's eyes flicked toward Madison for a split second before turning away. I'll handle it, he said, ending the call before any more questions could be asked. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before. Madison stood up slowly, walking a few steps toward him. Payroll, she repeated. It's nothing, he said. Too quickly. Just a delay. She stopped a few feet away. Everything seems to be just a delay tonight. Adam didn't respond. Because he didn't have anything left to say. His phone buzzed again. Another call. Then another. Messages started appearing. Notifications stacking. Vendors. Project managers. Questions. Concerns. Pressure. He opened one message. We're not receiving confirmation on payment approvals. Another. Client is asking if funding has been secured. Another. We need immediate clarification. Adam's breathing slowed, but not in a controlled way. In the way people slow down when they're trying not to panic. Madison watched all of it. Every movement. Every reaction. Every shift in tone. And she stepped back. Just one step. But it was enough. Adam, she said quietly. This doesn't look like a small issue. It isn't, he snapped before catching himself. The words hung there, exposed. He looked down at his phone again, opening the main account one more time. Nothing. No access. No authority. No explanation. Just absence. His phone rang again. This time, he answered without checking. Hello? Adam. It's your mother. Danielle's voice came through sharp and immediate. What's going on? He closed his eyes for a second. Nothing. Just a system issue. Don't lie to me, she said. Chloe just called. Something's wrong with the company accounts. His stomach dropped. Chloe. Of course she would notice. She's overreacting, he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. Then fix it. Danielle snapped. Now? The line went dead. Adam lowered the phone slowly, his hand tightening around it. For the first time that night, he didn't feel in control of anything. Not the situation. Not the narrative. Not even the people around him. Madison had already stepped further away. Physically. Emotionally. She crossed her arms. Watching him the way you watch something you're no longer sure you want to be part of. You should figure this out, she said. Not concerned. Not supportive. Just practical. Adam nodded slowly. But his mind wasn't catching up. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't solving a problem. He was facing one he didn't understand. And somewhere, far away from that room, I sat quietly. No calls. No messages. No urgency. Just silence. Because I already knew what he was starting to realize. This wasn't a glitch. It wasn't temporary. It wasn't something he could fix by calling the right person or saying the right thing. This was something deeper. Something structural. Something he had never taken the time to understand. And now, he was inside it, with no way out. He looked down at his phone one more time, refreshed the screen, waited. Nothing changed. And that was the moment it hit him. This wasn't a problem. This was a shutdown. By the time Adam landed back in the United States, his phone hadn't stopped vibrating once. Notifications stacked over notifications. Emails layered on top of missed calls. Everything demanding attention. Everything urgent. Everything slipping. He didn't even wait to get to the car before opening his banking app again. Still nothing. Same restrictions. Same blocked access. Same quiet message that made no sense no matter how many times he read it. Authorization pending. Pending from who? From what? He refreshed again. And again. No change. Adam. Madison's voice cut through the noise. But it felt distant now. He didn't look at her. Give me a second. She watched him. Standing just a few feet away in the airport pickup zone. Her expression unreadable. Not angry. Not emotional. Just assessing. He opened his business account next. Longer load time. Then, something new. Red indicators. Flags. Delayed transactions. He frowned. Scrolling faster now. His movements sharper. Less controlled. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. Madison stepped closer. Then start making it make sense. He exhaled. Irritation rising again. It's being handled. By who? That question hung in the air longer than it should have. Because for the first time, he didn't have an answer. His phone rang again. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. Hello, Mr. Carter. This is regarding your current project funding. We've encountered an issue with the scheduled release. His chest tightened. What kind of issue? There appears to be a restriction on the account tied to your project allocations. That's impossible, he snapped. That account is fully active. Not at this time. Sir. The line went quiet for a moment. Then, we'll need clarification before proceeding further. The call ended. Adam stood there, frozen, staring at the screen as if it might correct itself. It didn't. Madison stepped back again. Another inch. Another layer of distance. You said everything was stable, she said. It doesn't look like it. Adam turned toward her sharply. I said I've got it under control. But the words didn't carry the same weight anymore. Because control wasn't something you said. It was something you showed. And right now, he wasn't showing anything. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Chloe. He hesitated before answering. What? Her voice came through fast. Tight. Adam. What is going on with the company accounts? Nothing. he said. It's being handled. No, it's not, she snapped. We have delayed payments, flagged transactions, and 3 clients asking if we're still operational. His grip tightened. That's temporary. Then why can't I access the main account? That question hit differently. He didn't respond. Adam, Chloe said again. Slower now. More serious. What did you do? I didn't do anything, he replied, but the certainty was gone. There was a pause. Then, that's what I was afraid of. The line went dead. Adam lowered the phone slowly, his thoughts no longer moving in straight lines. Something was wrong. Not just a delay. Not just a glitch. Something deeper. Something he didn't understand. Madison was already walking away. Not far. Just enough. I need to take care of this, she said, grabbing her bag. He looked up. What do you mean? I mean, this isn't what I signed up for. Her tone was calm, final, and that was worse than anything else. This is temporary, he insisted. Then fix it, she replied. And just like that, she turned and walked toward the exit. No hesitation, no emotion, no looking back. The same way he had walked out of that office, the same way he had left me. The symmetry wasn't lost on him, but he didn't have time to process it, because his phone buzzed again, and again, and again, every vibration pulling him deeper into something he couldn't control. Back in Chicago, I sat quietly at my kitchen table, my phone resting beside a cup of coffee that had gone cold. I hadn't touched it in a while. I didn't need to, because I already knew what was happening. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It didn't need to be. The truth never arrives all at once. It leaks. Slowly, quietly, until there's nothing left to hold it back. My phone lit up briefly. A notification. Then another. I didn't rush to check them. I didn't react. I just let them sit there. Because this wasn't something I needed to chase. It was something that had already begun. And far away. Standing in the middle of an airport. Surrounded by people but completely alone. Adam was finally starting to understand. This wasn't something he could explain away. This wasn't something he could fix with a call or a signature. This was something that had already been set in motion. Before he even realized it, he looked down at his phone one more time, refreshing the screen again, waiting, hoping. Nothing changed. And for the first time, he felt it. Not confusion, not frustration, fear, real, quiet, undeniable fear, because the truth was no longer hidden. It was right in front of him, and there was nothing left to stop it from coming out. By the next morning, Adam had already decided, if he couldn't fix it financially, he would fix it legally. That was the kind of world he understood. Contracts, authority, control through pressure. He sat in a glass-walled office in downtown Chicago, the same city he had left just days before, now feeling completely different. Colder, less certain. Across from him sat a lawyer he had used before, sharp, expensive, confident, the kind of man who didn't lose. Or at least, that's what Adam needed to believe. So you're saying all of your access was removed at once? The lawyer asked, flipping through a stack of documents. Yes, Adam said, without warning. And these were joint accounts. They were tied to both of us. The lawyer nodded slowly, considering, and you believe your ex-wife initiated this? Adam's jaw tightened. I know she did. That certainty came quickly. Too quickly. Because he needed it to be true. He needed this to be something he could fight. The lawyer leaned back slightly. If that's the case, we can file for immediate legal review, asset interference, potential financial obstruction. Adam nodded. Do it. He didn't hesitate. Because hesitation meant doubt, and doubt meant losing control. Across the city, I was sitting in a smaller, quieter office. My lawyer didn't look impressed. She looked prepared. They filed, she said, sliding the documents toward me. I glanced at them briefly, then looked up. Of course he did. She gave a small, knowing nod. He's trying to force access back through the court. I leaned back in my chair, completely still. Can he? She didn't even pause. No. That answer landed exactly the way I expected it to. Not dramatic, not emotional, just final. He signed everything, she continued. Every structure, every condition, every clause. He just didn't read it carefully. I almost smiled. That sounded like him. Confident enough to assume, careless enough not to verify. What happens next? I asked. We respond, and then we let the court decide. Her tone was calm, because she already knew how this would end. Back at his office, Adam was pacing now, phone in hand, energy restless. They're going to reverse it, right? He asked. The lawyer didn't answer immediately. We'll present your case, he said carefully. That's not what I asked. A pause. Then, it depends on how the assets were structured. Adam stopped pacing. They were ours. The lawyer looked at him directly. Were they? That question hit harder than anything else so far. Because for the first time, Adam wasn't entirely sure. The courtroom wasn't large, but it felt heavy. The kind of space where outcomes weren't influenced by confidence or tone. Just facts. Adam sat at one table. I sat at another. For the first time since everything ended. We were in the same room again, but it didn't feel like anything we had been before. No connection. No tension. Just distance. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, it wasn't with anger. It was something else. Confusion. The judge entered. Everything began. Adam's lawyer spoke first. Confident. Clear. He framed it exactly the way Adam needed it to be framed. A sudden loss. Unfair interference. A disruption of expected access. I listened without reacting. Because none of it was new. It was just a different version of the same misunderstanding. When my lawyer stood, the tone shifted. Not louder. Not more aggressive. Just precise. She presented documents, signatures, agreements, structures. Everything Adam had signed. Everything he had ignored. Everything he assumed he understood. And slowly, piece by piece, the narrative changed. This wasn't interference. This wasn't sabotage. This was structure. The kind he had chosen not to understand. Adam shifted in his seat. For the first time, his confidence cracked. Not completely, but enough. The judge reviewed the documents carefully, asked a few questions, clarified a few points. Then, the decision. The court finds no evidence of unlawful interference. All actions appear consistent with previously agreed financial structures. The words were simple, but their impact wasn't. Adam didn't react immediately. He just sat there, still, as if waiting for something else to happen. Something that would undo it. Nothing did. It was over. Just like that. Outside the courtroom. The air felt different. Adam walked out first. His steps slower than before. Less certain. His phone buzzed again. He didn't check it. Not this time. Because he already knew. Whatever was waiting for him wasn't going to make things better. I stepped out a few moments later. No rush. No urgency. Just a quiet sense of completion. This wasn't about winning. It never was. It was about stepping out of something that was never built to protect me, and letting the rest follow its course. Adam stood a few feet away, staring at nothing in particular. For a moment, it looked like he might say something. But he didn't, because there was nothing left to say. No argument, no leverage, no control. Just consequences. He looked down at his hands, then back at the empty space in front of him. And that was the moment it finally settled in. The system he thought he could control was never his to begin with. And now, there was no way to get it back. He called her 3 times before she answered. The first 2 went straight to voicemail. The third rang longer than it should have. Long enough for doubt to settle in. Long enough for him to realize she might not pick up at all. Then, hello. Her voice was calm, flat, unfamiliar. Madison, Adam said quickly, stepping outside the building as if distance might give him control again. We need to talk. A pause. I figured you'd say that. I just got out of court, he continued. Things are complicated, but I'm handling it. Another pause. Are you? She asked. He ignored the tone. Where are you? I'm in the city, she replied. But I'm not coming to you. Adam stopped walking. What do you mean? I mean, she said slowly, if we're going to talk, we do it somewhere neutral. Something about the way she said it made his chest tighten. This wasn't how she used to speak to him. This wasn't the same woman who had been leaning into him just days ago. Laughing. Trusting. Believing. Fine, he said. Name the place? An hour later, they were sitting across from each other in a quiet cafe. No ocean views. No champagne. No illusion. Just two people in the reality neither of them had expected. Madison didn't smile when he sat down. She didn't lean forward. She didn't ask how he was. She just watched him. Waiting. So, she said after a moment. Start explaining. Adam leaned back slightly, trying to regain some version of himself. It's temporary, he said. There was a legal issue, but it's being resolved. She didn't react. Is that what you told your lawyer? She asked. His jaw tightened. What are you talking about? Madison reached into her bag and placed her phone on the table. Not aggressively. Not dramatically. Just deliberately. I did some checking, she said. That sentence changed everything. Adam felt it immediately. A shift. A loss. You went behind my back, he asked. She raised an eyebrow. You're really going to say that? The words landed harder than anything else so far. Because they weren't emotional. They were accurate. Adam looked away for a second, then back at her. What did you find? He asked. Madison leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering. I found that your accounts aren't just restricted. They're dependent. He didn't respond. I found that your company isn't stable, she continued. It's leveraged, overextended, and tied to structures you don't fully control. His silence confirmed everything. Madison sat back again. And I found that the person you just divorced, she paused, studying him carefully, was the one holding most of it together. Adam felt something inside him collapse. Not visibly, not completely, but enough. You don't understand how this works, he said, his voice quieter now. No, she replied. You didn't. The difference mattered, because she wasn't asking anymore. She was concluding. Adam leaned forward, his hands tightening slightly. This isn't permanent, he said. I can fix it. Madison shook her head slowly. That's the problem. He frowned. You don't even know what you're fixing. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was final. Adam searched her face for something, anything that looked like the woman he had left everything for. It wasn't there. What are you saying? He asked. Madison didn't hesitate. I'm saying I'm not staying in this. The words were simple, clean, uncomplicated, but they cut deeper than anything else that day. This is just a situation, he said quickly. It'll pass. She held his gaze. No, she said. This is who you are when things stop working. That sentence landed harder than the court decision, harder than the declined cards, harder than the silence. Because it wasn't about money. It was about him. Adam opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out, because there was nothing left to say. Madison stood up. No hesitation. No second thought. Just movement. You'll figure it out, she said, picking up her bag. Or you won't. He reached out slightly. Madison. But she didn't stop. Didn't turn. Didn't look back. The door opened. Closed. And just like that, she was gone. Adam sat there, his hand still half raised, as if the moment hadn't fully caught up with him yet. The cafe noise returned slowly. People talking, coffee machines humming, life continuing. But none of it felt real, because for the first time, there was no one left in front of him. No one beside him. No one behind him. Back in my apartment, I sat quietly by the window, the late afternoon light stretching across the floor. My phone rested beside me, untouched. I didn't need updates. I didn't need confirmation, because I already knew how this ended. Not with a confrontation, not with a final argument, but with absence, with people walking away, with silence filling the space where something used to be. I thought about what I had believed just days ago, that I had lost him, that someone else had taken my place. But sitting there, in that quiet room, I realized something that changed everything. No one had taken anything from me. They had simply chosen themselves. And for the first time, so had I. Somewhere across the city, Adam sat alone at a table meant for two, his phone no longer ringing. No messages coming through. No one asking where he was. No one waiting. And that was the part he wasn't prepared for. Not the loss of money. Not the collapse of control. But the silence. Because silence doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It doesn't give you a way back. It just stays. And for the first time in his life, there was no one left to answer him. By the end of the week, everything started to come apart. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic collapse. But slowly, quietly, piece by piece. Adam sat alone in his office, staring at a screen that used to mean something. Numbers, projects, accounts. All of it had once represented control. Now it just looked empty. His inbox was full, not with opportunities. With problems? Payment delayed. Client requesting clarification. Project suspended until further notice. Each message carried the same weight, the same implication. Something was wrong, and it wasn't fixing itself. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face, trying to think, trying to find something he could still control. But every path led to the same place. Nothing was moving. Nothing was responding. Nothing was his. The phone on his desk buzzed again. He didn't want to answer it, but he did. "What?" he said, his voice lower now. Tired. "Adam? It's Danielle?" Of course it was. Her tone wasn't sharp this time. It was something else. Tense. "What's going on?" she asked. He didn't answer right away, because for the first time, he didn't know how to explain it. "It's temporary," he said finally. There was a pause on the other end. "Then, that's what you said yesterday." He closed his eyes. "I'm handling it." "You'd better," she snapped. But the confidence was gone. People are asking questions. That part mattered, because Danielle had always cared about perception, about how things looked. And now, they didn't look right. "I'll fix it," he repeated. But even to himself, it sounded empty. The line went dead. Adam set the phone down slowly, staring at nothing for a moment. Then it buzzed again. "Chloe." He hesitated longer this time, then answered. "What?" Her voice came through differently than before. Not sharp, not dismissive, just distant. "I saw the accounts," she said. His grip tightened. "What about them?" "They're not just restricted," she replied. "They're disconnected." The word sat there, heavy. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that the company isn't functioning," she said. "Payroll failed. Projects are on hold. Clients are pulling back." He didn't respond, because he already knew. "I thought you had this under control," she added. There was no accusation in her voice, just disappointment. And somehow, that was worse. "It's being handled," he said again. But now, it sounded like something he was repeating for himself, not for her. Chloe exhaled slowly. "I don't think it is." Another pause. Then, "You should have paid attention." The line went quiet. Then it ended. Adam lowered the phone, his hand lingering there for a second longer than necessary. Because that was the moment something shifted. Not outside. Inside. For the first time. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was just tired. He looked around the office. The same space he had built his identity in. The same space that once felt solid. Now it felt temporary. Like something that had been held together by something he didn't fully understand. Something he never questioned. Because he never thought he had to. He stood up slowly, walking toward the window. The city stretched out below him. Unchanged. People moving. Cars passing. Everything continuing. As if nothing had happened. But for him, everything had. He thought about the past few days. The dinner. The cards. The calls. The courtroom. Madison walking away. Each moment. Clear now. Connected. Not random. Not separate. A pattern. And for the first time, he saw it. This wasn't something that had happened to him. This was something he had stepped into. Without understanding it. Without preparing for it. Without even noticing it. He let out a slow breath, resting his hand against the glass. Nothing felt stable anymore. Not his work. Not his relationships. Not even himself. His phone buzzed again. Another message. He didn't check it. Because he already knew what it would say. Another problem. Another demand. Another reminder that everything was slipping. He turned away from the window, looking back at the room. At the desk. At the chair. At everything that used to mean control. And for the first time, he understood something he had never considered before. He hadn't lost everything in one moment. He had lost it slowly, carelessly, piece by piece. Every time he assumed something would always be there. Every time he chose not to look closer. Every time he believed control meant ownership. It didn't. It never had. And now, there was nothing left to hold on to. He sat back down, his hands resting on the desk, his eyes unfocused. No calls. No voices. No one telling him what to do next. Just silence. Heavy. Final. And somewhere in that silence, the truth settled in completely. He hadn't lost Allison. He had lost everything else. And there was no way to get it back. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the kind that feels empty. The kind that feels earned. Morning light stretched across my kitchen floor. Soft and steady. Touching everything without asking for permission. The city outside moved like it always did. Cars passing. People rushing. Life continuing. But inside, everything was different. Not because something new had been added, but because something heavy had finally been removed. I stood there for a moment, my hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee, letting that feeling settle. No tension. No waiting. No second guessing. Just clarity. Weeks had passed since the court. Since the calls. Since everything that had once felt urgent stopped demanding my attention. And in that time, nothing dramatic happened. No sudden transformation. No overwhelming victory. Just quiet change. The kind you only notice when you stop looking for it. I went back to work. Back to my classroom. Back to the same rows of desks. The same early mornings. The same rhythm that used to feel small compared to everything else. But it didn't feel small anymore. It felt mine. There was something different in the way I stood. The way I spoke. The way I carried myself through the day. Not louder. Not harder. Just steadier. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fit into something that didn't belong to me. I wasn't adjusting. I wasn't explaining. I wasn't asking to be understood. I just was, and that was enough. I heard things about Adam. Not directly. Not from him. But through the kind of quiet conversations that travel without needing to be confirmed. The company had downsized. Projects had been lost. People had moved on. Danielle stopped calling. Not because she had changed, but because there was nothing left to control. Chloe, I heard, had distanced herself completely. No arguments. No loyalty. Just separation. And Madison. She disappeared from the story the same way she entered it. Quietly. Without explanation. Without consequence. Because people like that don't stay where there's nothing left to take. I didn't feel anything when I heard those things. No satisfaction. No regret. Just understanding, because none of it surprised me anymore. Consequences don't need witnesses. They just happen. One afternoon, after a long day at school, I found myself standing in front of a box I hadn't opened in years. It had been sitting there quietly, untouched, like it had been waiting. I knelt down, brushing a thin layer of dust from the top, my fingers pausing just for a second before lifting the lid. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered. Organized. Intentional. Like him. At the very bottom, wrapped carefully, was something I hadn't thought about in a long time. A small key. And beneath it, a folded piece of paper. I picked it up slowly, unfolding it with the same quiet awareness that had followed me through everything else. The handwriting was familiar. Steady. Uncomplicated. You don't need protection. You need freedom. I read it once. Then again. And this time, I understood it completely. He hadn't been preparing me to fight someone. He hadn't been teaching me how to win. He had been showing me how to stand on something that couldn't be taken away. Something that didn't depend on anyone else's choices. Something that stayed, even when everything else left. I closed my eyes for a moment, holding the note between my fingers. Because that was the part no one talks about. The part after everything ends. When there's no more conflict. No more noise. No more need to prove anything. Just space. And what you choose to do with it? I placed the note back in the box, setting the key beside it. Not as something I needed anymore, but as something I finally understood. I stood up slowly, looking around the room. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. I didn't lose a husband. I didn't lose a life. I lost a version of myself that believed I needed either of those things to be complete. And that was something I would never give back. Because the truth is, revenge isn't always loud. It isn't about shouting or proving or making someone else feel what you felt. Sometimes, it's quiet, structured, final. Sometimes, it's simply walking away and letting reality do the rest. And sometimes, the cruelest words are never spoken. They're processed. Your card has been declined. I smiled faintly at the thought. Not because it brought me satisfaction, but because it no longer meant anything to me. I picked up my bag, heading toward the door, the same way I had walked out of that office weeks ago. But this time, I wasn't leaving something behind. I was moving forward. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been made to feel like you were the one who had less, who mattered less, who would lose more, maybe you understand this better than anyone. So tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you have walked away quietly? Or would you have fought differently? And if this story felt real to you, if it reminded you of something you've lived through, or something you've seen, stay with me. Because sometimes the strongest stories aren't about what we say. They're about what we choose not to. And sometimes, the quietest endings are just the beginning of something stronger. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.